I usually talk about where the sermon came from. Actually, this sermon came as soon as church ended last week. I've just been trying to make it happen in my head in a way that makes sense to other people, which sometimes is difficult because I don't think my head works like many people's does. So I already realized that. So once I get past that, I can try to say it in a way that other people can understand. Back to the 4-year-old concept. But last week, Richie was here, and I think many of you know him, and he said to me, he was questioning why more people don't go to church, not this church, but any church. And basically, the downfall of Christianity at the moment, at least as far as organized religion goes. And he kept on saying, this church was built by the people who went to church here, and it was built for 310 people. And he says, where are they now? And and then there's been several different things going on this week. Things that I see on Facebook and disputes back and forth about what I consider irrelevant matters, and there's so many different things. And to me, it's really not a big wonder on why organized religion is getting bashed, because all organized religion seems to do, in my opinion, is bash each other. And I know many of you may not be on Facebook, but you see a post on Facebook and it's like, okay, that might make sense, but then it gets into this or that, and people correct them, and then the argument starts, and then earlier this week I saw somebody call Catholicism a pagan, just simply a pagan sect, and it's like, so in other words, you're saying that half of Christianity is merely a pagan sect. And to me that makes no sense. I'm not the biggest fan of Catholicism, and that's why I don't go to a Catholic church, because it does not necessarily line up exactly with how I think. But the thing is that back in my truck days, when I felt like God was taking me, when I was living in my truck, like 2006 to somewhere in 2013, somewhere in that area, but I felt like God took me to many different things. And from when I was younger, I had a rather passionate dislike for Catholicism. And I admit that. And when I got with God, one of the thoughts that I had was, if I meet a Catholic, try not to have them be Catholic, and try to get them to go to a different church. But I came to realize that that wasn't my job, because God took me to some people, and I did a lot of various work at their house and stuff like that, and we would talk about God constantly, and they just seemed like the best Christians ever. And I never asked them, where they went to church or anything, because it's like, they had so much love in their heart and everything else. It's like I could see they're Christians. And as the Bible says, they will know we are Christians by our love. And it was just so obvious. And then I eventually found out they go to the Catholic Church. Wow, that kind of blew my mind for a little while. I had to start praying. It's like, am I supposed to try to get them to go to a different church, or what am I doing here? But the thing is they told me that one reason that it's not like I asked them. They didn't ask me where I went to church. But once they told me they were at the Catholic Church, they said they actually were not telling me because of the stigma they realized that so many Protestants have against the Catholic Church. And they said, we realize that there are certain traditions and certain things that go on in the church that aren't going to get us to heaven. And they were older. They were in their 70s, and they had been in the Catholic Church all their life. And they said, we realize that. They said, this stuff is not going to get us there. But we like it. We know the people there. We've been going there our entire life. They said, just because the church may have a couple of faults, they all have some faults. And it was like, God taught me such a lesson from them. Because I could no longer think Catholic, got to try to convert you. No. Because frankly, I think there's just as many people in Protestant churches that have no idea what's going on as in a Catholic church. I mean, so many people think that they just sit there and, yep, I did my church today. Check it off the list. Good to go. But I think that the core of that matter is that we read about Jesus, and I'm going to have a lot of biblical references, but I'm going to try to keep it rather easy. We read about Jesus, and we know that there was a whole bunch of different rabbis, and Jesus was a rabbi, and he had his 12 disciples, and other rabbis had their disciples, and they each taught kind of their version of Jewishness. And nowadays, we have all these different churches. According to Google, there is over 35,000 different sects of Christianity nowadays. And guess what? All of them think they're right. 35,000 different sects that all of them, sects, S-E-C-T-S is what I'm saying. When I hear it on here, it sounds like I'm saying something else. But all of them think that they're correct. And then you go on Facebook, and you see a post, and then somebody has to correct it, and then somebody has to correct them, and then there's a big argument, and it's like, people, why don't we go back to what Jesus taught? Because he was the best teacher. He knew what to teach. But we don't go there. We argue over things that really make very little difference. I hate this post right here because either you or you is not in the picture here. So there was one time, and this is another reason why I avoid preaching on certain things. There was one time that I was kind of hopping amongst churches in Honesdale. And I missed church the one week at the Presbyterian church. And the Presbyterian pastor knew that I oftentimes went literally right across the lawn at the Methodist church. And I don't know where I went for one week, but I saw him the next week. And he said to me, "Oh, you missed a great talk on Calvinism last Sunday." And I wasn't trying to be mean, but I asked him. It's like Calvinism is the concept of predestination. Generally speaking, Presbyterians believe in the concept that Calvin developed of predestination, and generally speaking, the Methodist Church leans more towards Arminianism that leans towards free will. So basically, the predestination concept is God already chose Elaine before the beginning of time, and she's going to be a Christian. Whereas, basically, not a whole lot of choice on her part. This is what the deal is. That's pretty much it. Whereas the Methodists lean more towards Arminianism, which is free will, which is saying, okay, Elaine heard the word, and Elaine chose. And honestly, you can go into the Bible, and you can make a dramatic case for both sides. So my answer to him saying that I missed a great talk on Calvinism was basically, why would you preach that? And he said, well, that's what we believe as Presbyterians. And I said, okay. I said, but the thing is that I can walk right across the lawn here, and I can go and I can hear a true backing for the direct opposite of it. So in other words, he was preaching his opinion. He wasn't preaching me something, I wasn't there, but he wasn't preaching something that is going to get you to heaven. He was preaching his thoughts. And when you're preaching your thoughts, you're no better than that Jewish rabbi that was teaching his thoughts that Jesus put down so drastically. You're teaching your own thoughts. What is it? Does it benefit anybody if I stand here and I say, well, we're more Methodist, so I can give you an awesome talk on Arminianism and free will. Is it going to help you? Is it going to benefit you? It's going to give you a little more head knowledge, but head knowledge to me is virtually worthless. You want something that affects your heart and mind, it's going to then change your behavior. And that's the reason why I try to avoid that, and that is another reason why I think that there is so many people, especially now in the world of Facebook and in the world of the internet and everything else, people question all the time. It's like, well, this church believes that, this church believes that, this church believes that. And Who's right? So that's the reason why I lean towards preaching the way that I lean towards, because I try to preach what I think Jesus would preach. And I don't think that Jesus would preach either free will or predestination, because if I look through the Bible, I can come up with a strong case on either. Baptism is another example. Me personally, I believe somebody should wait until they're old enough to decide, and then they should have full immersion baptism. That's my opinion. Am I going to stand here and preach that to you? No. Would I have before I went? No, I still wouldn't have done it then, because it's my opinion. But then I went to Lancaster Bible College, and one thing that we talked about was baptism, and there were people there that fully believed in infant baptism or sprinkling baptism. And I got to hear their arguments on it, and I got to look through the Bible on it, and it's like, wow. Once you open your eyes, it's like, I could literally, for next week, I could prepare a sermon on immersion baptism, or I could prepare a sermon on infant sprinkling baptism, and guess what? I can make either one of them 100% biblical. So, does that change my mind on the whole dunking thing? No, I still think you should have a choice and be dunked. But just because it seems to make more sense in my own head. But that's why I avoid topics like baptism. Because even if I stand here and I give you the awesomest talk on either side of baptism, and I can make it 100% biblical, it's not getting you anywhere. All you're doing is I'm basically taking a cookie cutter and I'm going, and I'm trying to make you guys think like me. I don't want you to think like me as far as baptism goes, or as far as issues like that go. I want like I said a couple of weeks ago, I want to try to teach people how to think. If everybody wants to have differing opinions on baptism or on the Trinity is another big thing. I mean, virtually everybody has a little bit of different concept on the Trinity, and guess what? You can't prove it either. Not that you can't. I'm not saying the Trinity is not real. What I'm saying is that everybody can have their own little difference in concept. I don't have to have Elaine say, well, this is what I think, and I can stand there and bash her and say, this is what you have to think. That's what's happening in Christianity all over the place, and especially with the internet nowadays. People see this and they're like, why do I want to go to that church? It's a bunch of people that just argue stuff that they want me to believe. But I don't believe exactly that, so I don't want to go there. So then, I try to look at the things that Jesus taught. And the things that Jesus tried to unite people with. And we know that consistently, he was against the religious leaders. He was against the rabbis. And I think a lot of the reason for that was the rabbis were teaching the wrong thoughts. They were teaching, this is how me and this group of people, is going to worship God. They were missing the whole point. And Jesus came along, and if you could read, please. Matthew 5, 3 through 12. And this is what Jesus taught.
Matthew 5, 3 through 12?
Yep.
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you whom, when men revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so men persecuted prophets who were before you.
Thank you. That's what Jesus taught. Jesus taught totally different than everybody else. and basically still teaches totally different than anybody else to this day. Nowadays we have, you can go to most any church and you hear, this is how we think, this is what, and it's like, I always call it the cookie cutter. It's like, here you go, we all want to try to look like this. But the idea is not to be a cookie cutter, in my opinion. I love watching The Chosen. I encourage everybody to watch it. It would be awesome to set it up. We should watch it over here, and that would be awesome. And I love watching The Chosen and the way that they have the disciples interacting with each other all the time. Jesus leaves for a few days to go who knows where, sometimes praying, sometimes out on a mission on his own. And the disciples are back there. Where's Jesus? Where's Jesus? He should be here helping us. We don't know what to do. And they argue over it. You've got 12 different people all trying to put in their opinion and their thoughts and everything like that. And I love how to see how they try to get the thing accomplished, but they all think differently. And I think that's the same way it is with the churches, is that they all think a little bit different, and this is how we need to do it and stuff. But the thing is Jesus then comes and he preaches a sermon like that. And it has nothing to do. Jesus didn't sit down and say, okay, this is what I want Christianity to be in 2,000 years. Get baptized like this. Here's the definition of the Trinity that I want you to go by. Here's the definition of predestination or free will. Jesus didn't sit down and say any of that stuff. Jesus basically said, repent, love God, love others. Time after time after time, this was his point. And yet, why isn't that being preached in every church today? Because if it was, there would be a whole lot more people here. Bruce was talking about how the guy in the Masons talked about the past, the present, and the future. Well, in my opinion, if the future is going to be the future of Christianity and the future of all these churches that are going out of business all over the place, they need to start realizing that love is the answer. And that's what Jesus preached, and that's what Jesus lived, and that's what Jesus came here to show us. He didn't come here to argue over all this other stuff. And he basically tried to tell the rabbis, your opinion doesn't matter. It's an irrelevancy. So if I'm ever giving you my opinion, I sincerely ask that you tell me that. Just because I'll say it to somebody else doesn't mean that I don't expect to hear it back. If I stand up here and I tell you guys my opinion, first of all, I'll try to say it if it's my opinion. But second of all, my opinion isn't always right. In fact, if you ask certain people, it's probably usually wrong. And then we see Jesus, who's been all over Israel. And the person that he lifts up is somebody that's not following any of the laws, not doing any of it, not even a Jew. And if you could read the story of the Roman centurion, Matthew 8, 5 through 13. Here, if you want this, just time talking to him.
Okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Sorry about that, Mark.
When Jesus returned to Capernaum, a Roman officer came and pleaded with him, Lord, my young servant lies in bed, paralyzed and in terrible pain. And Jesus said, I will come and heal him. But the officer said, Lord, I am not worthy to have you come into my home. Just say the word from where you are, and my servant will be healed. I know this because I am under the authority of my superior officers, and I have authority over my soldiers. I only need to say, go, and they go, or come, and they come. And if I say to my slaves, do this, they do it. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed. Turning to those who were following him, he said, I tell you the truth, I haven't seen faith like this in all of Israel. And I tell you that many Gentiles will come from all over the world, from east and west, and sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob at the feast of the kingdom of heaven. But many Israelites, those for whom the kingdom was prepared, will be thrown into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Verse 13, then Jesus said to the Roman officer, go back home because you believe it has happened. And the young servant was healed that same hour.
Look at that. He believed, so it happened. Here you're talking about a Roman centurion. These are the people that were ruling. This is a guy that quite possibly killed Jews. And yet, because he believed and had faith, his kid was healed. And think about that. You're standing there as a Pharisee that has a whole bunch of disciples, and yet Jesus says, listening to this conversation, and Jesus says, the Roman centurion has more faith than me, the Pharisee. A lot of those people back in those days literally had the Torah memorized. They could recite the first 5 books of the Bible. Many of us can't recite a verse. The first 5 books of the Bible they could recite. Look at the faith they had. And yet Jesus says, that isn't faith. The Roman centurion, who knows virtually nothing about God, but did see what Jesus was capable of doing, he believed that Jesus was able to do it. He is the one that stood out amongst all those other people that were there, all the Jews. He's the one that stood out. And this is what we have to get going in the world today, so people can see Christianity. People can see that we are Christians by our love. Because if we want to change the world, we want to change the people around us, if we do want to build this church, but not only building the church, because as you see, Jesus didn't necessarily come to build a following for himself. He was trying to get people to build a following for God. Because the spotlight was not on him. He didn't put the spotlight on him. As I read earlier, he was here to be a servant. He was here to show people love. He was here to get people to repent and to love God and to love others. And to me, that's what we need for a church that was built for 310 people. And not only for us, but all these other churches that are low on people. And all of Christianity that is falling apart, and everybody sees all this arguing amongst all these things. We need to focus on what's important. We need to focus on Jesus, who is the Son of God, and clearly said he was the Son of God towards the end of his ministry. He didn't say it in the beginning, but he showed people. And in the end, he said, I am the Son of God. He acknowledged that he is the Messiah. This was the point. This is what we need to do. So when I'm asked, where are all the people? And the church was built for 310 people. My answer is not this is all the faults and the ways that it has happened, but the idea is this is what we need to do to be able to look to that future. This was the past, this is the present, but we need to look to the future. And in my opinion, the only way that the future can be changed is by doing the same thing that Jesus did. Telling people to repent, but bringing them in with love. And I was told not to say thank you. A friend of mine said that why should thank you? But I like to say thank you because you actually sit there and listen to me. So, I don't know, it just seems appropriate to me. But I was told that I should say something like, peace be with you, or something. But anyway, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say thank you, because, I don't know, it's kind of, I feel, it's kind of like a humble thing to me. I don't know what, I'll get opinions on that when we're having coffee and donuts, because I don't know exactly how to go with that. So thank you very much.